Michael, you there? There's
I'm
Michael.
here.
Okay, we got. I want to get Betty on board so we can invite Betty. So
Okay.
let's see. Where is Betty? Where is Betty? We gonna get Betty in 1 second. Betty. Boom. Betty. Bang. I just invited Betty. Waiting for her to log in, and then we'll be ready to go. There she goes. Bam. Wow. Hello, Betty. Hello, Betty.
Hi.
Oh my goodness. Well, first and foremost, I want to say
Good.
thank you to the team over at Error Management, Major Models, our producer,
Is this
Nadia.
better? Is this better?
Oh, Michael, you look beautiful. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm not worried. I just want to
You
make
look
sure that.
fantastic. And
Okay.
Betty just got that great lighting on her. So I got this by one of the agents over at Major saying, Omar, you need a stylist. Hey, I'm wearing Beyond Yoga, buddy. I'm comfortable. Okay, so please. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Michael Flutie and Betty, for joining us on this live. It's going to be an exciting one. Michael, you and I have known each other for so many years. Just to refresh people's memory, Michael owned company models in New York City back in the 90s. Seasoned veteran, elite model management before. Betty joined him over at company models. And then she went on the year 2000 and she joined the team over at models.com. You're like the IMDb of models, I mean, of the fashion industry. That's really who you are. And I just want to be able to share some great, great stories about this phenomenal era. Michael, I got to tell you a very funny story before we even begin. I don't know if you, yeah, I think you're aware. You actually discovered my son's mother, Lila,
That is correct.
and you named her Lila because that's not her
That
name.
is correct. I'm,
And I
I'm famous
remember,
for I'm famous for even not knowing the right name or changing your name. I'm either calling you by the wrong name or just changing it.
well, I just remember when we were dating, me going to St. Pete's, Florida to visit her parents, and everybody kept calling her Carrie, and I'm like, who's Carrie? She goes, oh, that's me. My name. I'm like, how the hell did you end up with Lila? She goes, Michael Flutie. Me, Michael, you always had an incredible. You had cojones. I call it cojones. Because you were one of those guys who would take someone and go, oh, we're going to reinvent you right now. We're chopping the hair. We're dyeing it red. We're doing this. And you just reinvented the whole thing. And from my understanding, you were the guy who just created everything. And then Betty, you are the one who executed. Because you were just on the phone making the shit happen. So Michael, tell us a little bit about company, how it all came about, how did you join this industry?
Well, I think Omar and Betty, thank you for having both of us on. This is amazing, and God knows we love telling stories. Um, I think you bring up an interesting point about changing names and cutting hair and dyeing it. I mean, I think at the end of the day, all of us are in this business because A, we love talent, we love working with people, and you have to have a passion for that, and you have to have a passion for wanting to do things for other people because everything that you do is propelling someone else's career, right? Of course, you kind of catch the wind and you go along with it, but it's all about the person you're representing. But we grew up at a time in the 90s and 80s where branding and marketing people was just an innate part of what we do. And changing someone's name or cutting their hair or re-imaging them is part of branding and marketing, right? It's elementary marketing 101. How do you
Correct.
position someone in the marketplace? And I think, 20 years ago, we had an opportunity to do that with other people. Now they're doing it themselves. Like everybody's actually just kind of inventing and creating themselves because they have the power of a tool called an iPhone, right? And a camera. But I was very fortunate. I started my career at Elite, and I mean, how I got there would take about 5.5 hours. So I'll just jump right to my first job, and which was making appointments. I literally was making appointments, and that's what I was told to do. Like, you didn't speak to anybody, you didn't do anything. You just called up, and you called up a studio, and he said, "Hi, it's Michael from Elite, and I want to send over Leela Moss to come and see you tomorrow." And they would say yes, and then the girl would go to the client, and they're like, "Oh, say hi to Michael." And they go, "Who's Michael?" And that's really kind of how it all started. And I was very lucky that we were given models to take care of, their charts to take care of, and we'll talk about charts in a second. And I had some incredible girls that I worked with, some incredible women. It started with somebody that we have a mutual relationship with, a friendship with, Laura Milligan,
Oh my,
who, yeah, who,
Lola.
Laura. I will never call her Lola, by the way, Omar. Sorry. Her name is Laura, and it will always be Laura. Her and I laugh about that all the time. She's the only person I don't want to change the name. Her name is Laura Milligan. And, then came Stephanie Seymour, and then I was, Cindy Crawford was just starting out in Chicago, and Cindy Crawford was in high school, and I had to make that phone call to say, like, is Cindy available to come and work for American Vogue, like, next week with Mr. Penn? And they'd be like, "No, she has an exam." And I'm like, "Oh my God, an exam? What are you talking about?" But that's the day that we had phones, Omar. We had to make phone calls, not text. No, like, "Oh, I left a text." You called, and the phone rang, and that's how my career started. And I said that I was trained by the very best. I worked with John Casablancas. So today I credit him and Louise DuPont. A big shout out to Louise DuPont, who taught me everything artistically about the business and gave me an opportunity to go to Paris. And so from Elite New York, I went to Paris, and I ran an agency there called City Models.
Oh yeah.
And got to meet your friends and mine, Peter Limberg and Paolo Reversi, and all the people that we used to talk on the phone with or take bookings with. As an agent, I got a chance to go there and actually work with them because, as you remember, in the 90s, we used to send girls to Paris and Milan all the time, right? But agents didn't get to go anywhere. That's a whole new thing now. You get to go with your clients and travel all over the world. And that's how it kind of took off. And then one day, I got fired from City. I was fired because one of the people that I replaced was coming back, Frederica. Do you remember Frederica? I don't know, Frederica Levy, who was running the agency. She had taken time off. I was covering for her. And when she came back, they let me go. And I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I had two options, I either can go and start my own agency, because how was I going to go get a job, right? Like I already could kind of done so much, and I knew so much. And I kind of started developing a feeling of what my mission and vision was in my life for me. And long story short, I was sitting at La Coupole, and I saw that big poster, and I said, that would be a really cool name for an agency. And I was with Luma Magnuson and Karina Retman and Anna Tamander. We were having lunch, and they were La Coupole, and I'm like, no, Co for company. And that's how company was created, and the rest is history. And then Preston Westenberg, who's a very dear friend of both Betty's and I's, called me up one day. I was looking for somebody to come and assist us in an office. And she said, "You've got to meet this girl, Betty. She loves models. And I'm going to turn it over to Betty to tell you how it all happened that she came to work with us at the sort of the best years of the industry, right? The early 90s. And so, Betty, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how you got into this business?
Well, first of all, I have to say, it's funny to hear you say, how John and Louise taught you everything. Because for me, it's always been you. You've always taught me everything. I love models, but I've been reading Vogue when I was a teenager. I've talked about it, how I'm daughter of immigrants and reading Vogue, who could ever afford anything in Vogue magazine. I have the Brooke Shields cover from the early 80s, So when I graduated from college, I wasn't looking to come into the business, but, I met this woman, Preston, just pure chance. right, in this random place. And we became friends. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I graduated from college. And she's like, well, do you like, I can't remember, but I think it was like, why don't you try looking at an agency? And actually, I went to Elite. I don't know if you know this. And I think it was, oh my God, what's her name? Trudy.
Lisa? Oh.
Maybe Lisa. One of the, and they were like, oh, I think you're, you know, overqualified. They didn't have room, but they said something nice. And then I'm so happy because I ended up with Michael, and he's like, gave me a chance. And I didn't have any kind of background in fashion, even though I liked models. And I started at the front desk. I don't know if you remember, because I had to learn everything. And I think that's the best way to learn, is by like going from the ground up. And you really gave me the opportunity, like, you know, when no one else did. So.
Oh. Well, you talk about, Betty, you talk about something that is so, I think, an important part of the era of the industry and era, obviously. What a great name, by the way. Let's talk about what a great name for an agency.
Fantastic.
Management company, era. But she and I, you know, Betty and I and you started in an era where we had to work from the ground up, and we worked 24 hours, 7 days a week on a telex machine until 11 o'clock at night. For everybody who doesn't know what a telex machine is, it was pre-telephone, pre-fax, pre-computer. You sat and you typed into a machine the writing, and it went through a strip of paper, and then you fed that strip of paper into another machine, and it went on the other side of the ocean to Germany, where it reached Otto Versand to do a booking for one of your, you know, 8,000 Deutschmarks, not euros, a day, right? To do a booking for 14 days in the Canary Islands. Those were the days. 8,000 Deutschmarks a day in the Canary Islands for 15 straight days. And that's how we booked models. Consistently worked every single day. So in the era of when Betty joined, she worked at the front desk. I was adamant about everybody learning and understanding the clients, and the front desk was the best place to sit. And if Betty, if you remember, once a month, where did Michael Flutie sit? At the front desk. I would sit at the front desk once a month and answer the phone, company management. And by the way, it was called company management, not company models, because I did not want to identify talent with the word model. I believe that we were providing a management service to talent. And I was very, very proud of that. And I remember people saying to me, like, no, you have to have the word model in company management. It's like it identifies you. I'm like, no, the work you do identifies you. The girls, the women you represent identifies you. Words do not identify you. Words just sort of explain a little bit more of what you do. But at the end of the day, it is important, I think, to start a career. And we were lucky enough to have that. And we were trained by the very best. And we got to work with photographers, Omar and Betty, right? Photographers that actually created amazing images. And we as agents were part of telling that story. Models were part of telling that story. You booked a model to go on a shoot, and you said, this is what's going to happen. They're going to shoot these clothes, and yeah, but you're going to be on, this is the character that they want you to be, and this is what you have to do because it's inspired by Gaultier's collection, because he went to Cuba, and that's how these clothes were styled on the runway. And you gave information. It's not, I mean, not that it's not good, because I really believe that we live in a time where also we have to respect where we are today, right? Before models, there were illustrations, right? I mean, I could just imagine people sitting there going like, oh my God, they're going to take our jobs away. Models are coming in to take away the pages by Saks that used to be illustrations in Vogue magazine. Yeah. So anyway, I just rambled for a little bit. You know, sorry, Betty, but that's where
I love when you mention about sending the models out on Ghost East. I remember once I had a boss, my first job in the industry. I worked at a small agency called L'Image Model. And I remember the boss used to come in, and if you weren't on the phone, oh, you're about to get fired. He would say, you see this thing? Use it. Boom, 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 boom. Always on the phone. And I love when Betty said, talked about, ghosties and having models go out on castings, just general castings. How exciting was that time for you to be able to call a photographer, art director, catalog company, advertising company and say, hey, I have somebody really brilliant. She just had, or he just had 10 pages of GQ or Italian Vogue. Can you please meet them? And there's no job available, but you just have them meet, and that creates an opportunity for your model right there. Because when the job comes, they go, hey, what about that person from company that was sent, a week ago or 2 weeks ago? Remember her or him? Wow, amazing. Let's do it. So
Yeah.
speak to her about that situation, because we created jobs. We didn't wait for, no disrespect on Casting Network, which pretty much rules everything today, but we had to create the jobs. I mean,
Well,
it just didn't come out of nowhere.
I think, Omar, you bring a really good point, because our job as agents, and Betty knows that, is that we, not only in our scouting process, but in our development process, we developed models for photographers.
Yes.
When you went out looking for talent, you said, this is a Peter Lindbergh girl, this is a Mario Sorrenti girl, Mario Testino girl, right? We have agents, I really believe, have become transactional people that have the power of, has all been taken away from them, and photographers, the power of photographers is being taken away from them. And first it was photographers, then it was the designers, then the designers gave it to the stylists, and then the stylists gave it to the casting directors. And now basically 5, 6 casting directors decide everything that's going to happen, because they've turned it into a disposable business. Models today, they walk a runway, they last 2, 3 years. And Betty and I were talking about this the other day, and Betty, you should talk about it a little bit more, because I thought it was so fascinating. Tell Omar and what you said to me about models today.
Well, actually, before we even get on to models today, I want to actually give some, as the young kids say now, give flowers, to Michael, because he was saying, can you actually hear me? I have like a buzz.
I can.
We could hear you perfectly, Betty.
Okay. So Michael says that it's like, oh, that's part of what we did. But I feel like you were like so visionary, so ahead of your time, because he took models who were like tiny, like 5'5", 5'6", I mean, there was Kate, but that's it. Kate is like one of a kind. But like, they took on models that were not traditional models, like, the Jamie Kings, the Jamie Richards, he took models like Connie Fleming, who is coming like back, Sybil Buck. People are like, New York is still very, and she's doing great. And she's like, iconic. But like back then it was like the pierced nose, the red hair, like, all these models that like, Michael recognized that. I mean, I have to say, New York it's always been more like less adventurous. Like, Europeans are just more adventurous in terms of the models. And Michael really had this kind of energy. He did things like show packages. Like like he was the first one who made show packages so fun. It was something people look forward to. It was like, it was all like a way to express his creativity and his vision, and it came out through the logo, the packaging, how we presented the model, and I think that was really at the dawn of that.
But
So
I recall,
and renaming models like Nine. Remember Nine
yeah,
Miles? Her name was
well,
Tara, and he like, let's do it Nine, and it was just like it was like fun. It was an era where it was like, just try anything and it's fun, and he was open to diversity in all manners, like before all this like talk about diversity, like way back then.
Betty, for people that don't know who Connie Fleming is, I mean, I often don't talk about that, but that was really kind of not only groundbreaking, but it was like everybody in our agency, do you remember? It was like, what do you mean we're going to say? And Connie Fleming worked for Patricia Fields, and she was transitioning. This is like the 90s.
Early.
You don't represent 90s. What? Excuse me?
I think early. like early
Yeah,
90s.
early 90s. Yeah,
Early 90s.
you don't represent a transitioning model, like how are you going to book her? And she ended up going and walking from Mugler, and then she ended up working with Mugler. But it was giving people an opportunity. And I think that that's what was the most exciting part about it. And in not looking at people, and this is kind of the thing that always, I don't know, it bothers me today a little bit, because I think we've turned into like, what's right and what's wrong. But if you always looked at everything in a very neutral, democratic way, your whole entire life, I was an immigrant, Betty was an immigrant, Omar, you're an immigrant. We all came to America to pursue a dream and to give ourselves an identity. And the era of the 90s, 80s, 70s, that gave us that opportunity. And we didn't talk about it as like, oh, I'm white, I'm black, I'm like, it wasn't like, we didn't look at models that way. We looked at models for what they were. And Connie to
Well,
us was,
you did.
well,
A
thank
lot,
you. This is
a lot
not
of
a
people.
show about Michael Flutie. It's a show about the era. But I thank you. I appreciate it, Betty. But I love when I remember, like, even like 9 Miles, and what about Julie Anderson? Like, here's a girl that was working, had a really good career, but things had stalled, and we took someone like Julie Anderson, and we completely like revamped her career, and she took off. But it was also not the power of the vision and the power of relationships, Omar. It was also about the power of empowering women to believe in themselves, to believe that they had value, to believe that they could represent something like a beauty brand or a fashion brand authentically, right? Not because of just the paycheck, not just because of how many, there were no followers. There was no, like, none of that existed. You took a girl from Nebraska, she was 5'7", you saw potential, you brought her to New York, she stayed in your house or in somebody else's house. I think I don't know, Betty, did anybody ever stay in your apartment? Because I know that Preston was one of our,
Betty goes, no, no, no,
no,
no,
no.
no.
Well, but, and
My
then,
house was a hotel.
but you develop them, right? And then you would send them to see Bruce Weber, and Bruce Weber would be like, I wanted to come with me on a trip to go to do Abercrombie and Fitch, and before you know it, they're doing covers, and within 3-6 months, I mean, sometimes it took longer because there are some girls that we invested so much time in and put so much energy, and we would always, and Betty knows that, when we signed someone, we never gave up, ever gave up. We made a commitment to somebody in their career. They moved to New York. They gave up school, and we were like, you know what? We're going to make sure they work. And that was the passion, right? That's what but we were given the tools in that era to really work with those kind of things because people paid attention, right? Today, it's a different story. I don't know if what we did in the 90s we could do today. But what I think we can do is remind people that at the end of the day, no matter what tool you're using, it's the power of you believing in something and the power of the person believing in themselves. They've got to believe in themselves, and that's how you create a career. I listened to one of, I think Studios, we did an interview the other day, and Justin Campbell, my partner in Things Magazine, asked the question about our models our models today, or could models achieve what some of the other models had achieved in the 90s? And he said that, the models of the 90s had the tools to do what they did. They will never be the same. But what they have today are tools that are very different, right? And they're able to create careers for themselves without depending on so many other people. And I think that that's what the power of technology and how fortunate they are, because the tools are in their own hands and they don't have to rely on a lot of people. You don't have to move from Nebraska today to become an actor or a model. That's kind of the biggest, one of the biggest part of what we're doing at Things Magazine and at technologies is developing that idea. And that's why we started the Screen Test Awards, to give young aspiring talent the opportunity to develop their career, discover their potential without ever leaving their home. And that is part of the commitment that I think that we make and we always made. And to bring it back to where we were at company management. And Omar, I would love, I don't know if you've ever told the story, but how exactly did you get started again? You started in an agency and you made appointments, but how did you find the business?
I actually got into this business through Studio 54.
Oh,
I
wow.
I
Were you
ended
a
up at
go-go
Studio
boy?
54.
What were you? You were dancing on a bar?
No, I was a kid from Panama who was a swimmer. I swam for the national team in Panama, and I just happened to be in the city with a buddy of mine, Ricardo. We barely spoke English, and we just looked at this place. He said, "Hey, that's a place where famous people go, and let's check it out." And Steve Rubell was like, "Oh, those two right there," and we got in. And that, I always say that's the day I was born. I saw a world that I'd never. I didn't know who these people were. They were all fascinating to me, from Halston to Andy to Jean-Michel Basquiat to all these characters. And I got discovered there to become a model, and I moved to Milan and worked in
What
Milan doing
agency?
shows.
What
I was
agency in
with
Milan?
Master Ricardo Guy, Elena Di Caste.
Wow.
And I ended up modeling, and then I moved back to New York. And my dear friend, photographer Rene Volpi, asked me about becoming a
Oh
booker
my God.
at a
Renee
small
Volpe.
agency called Lamage Models, and that's where I started as a booker. And one of the things that I miss about agents, I don't want to call it bookers, agents like yourself, the Nadias, the Chris Forbergs, we have characters in our era. Booking a model, to me, it was always a lifestyle. Being an agent, to me, is a lifestyle. I always believe that the 9 to 5 is what we do, but the real job starts from 5 on. Because that's when you go to that gallery opening, or you go to that photographer's book signing, and you met the stylist from Gucci, or you met this or that. And then, it's about the relationships that we had to build careers. So I would like to speak more about with you and Betty about building careers. I recall going to your agency, Michael, and I never really visited that many agencies, but I was so intrigued by what happens at company. And I remember walking in. I never saw anything like that in my entire life. You had this book, this like velvet book in the front in your lobby with these huge pages that I'm like, oh, I didn't even bother going into the booking room. I'm like, oh, this guy is at another level. Your vision was so perfect and on the spot, like you had a vision. And it's something that I think is lacking in today's making of models, because now, as you said, we have those tools, the technology, where you could do it yourself. And I always say to people, there's a lot of advantages to this industry today. One of the advantages, you could do it yourself. One of the disadvantages, you could do it yourself. You don't know what you're doing. You think you know what you're doing. But what about the numbers? What about the rates? Do you know what POP is? Do you know what POS is? Do you know what billboard is? Do you know what transit is? Do you know those things? Do you know what a media buy is? They don't know. So you could probably speak about that.
Betty, did you want to say something?
Well, it's interesting because I, I was part of that era. I noticed in the comments someone says they missed the booking table. So the booking table was this for the younger folk. We didn't have computers back then. So we were on the phone, and we had, actually, I think it came right after the telex, because I was of the period where we had faxes, where it was like, oh my God, we had to fax these documents, and we stood over the fax machine just making sure it went in, but we had charts where these huge like cardboard things, and each model for the week, we would hand write all their appointments on there, and there was nothing more satisfying I would talk about than like a giant confirmed, like the red confirmed, like Carolyn Kramer had the best writing. Could there be like American Vogue with Peter Lindbergh in the red pencil, like, like across the whole week. It was so exciting. So the booking table is a chart, and it looks like a wheel, and the charts, they would drop like the charts in it, and like when the person on the other side of the table needed the chart, you'd spin around like a roulette wheel, so it's like funny, those were the days. But it's funny because I came from that era, the old era, or sort of old era, and then I've, because of my work at models.com, I still visit agencies now. I just came today from visiting one, and yes, the Wheel of Fortune, as someone said. And the first time, I think, like once, like email started really taking off, and it was just like the quietest thing. And I went in, I was like, why is this so quiet? Because they're all just emailing clients, and I'm like, the old days were like, come on, like just the negotiating and the exciting and slamming down on the phones, and like I would throw phones at like my coworkers, like Alexis, like I would throw a chart at him. It was always like very vibrant. So I do miss that, like not me, I'm not an agent anymore, but like the energy, like especially with the pandemic, it really switched, because now, and that's what we were talking about, the whole like, how do people learn? You need to learn through the other people. So now they went from 5 days a week to like no days a week. And now it's back to 4 days a week for most agencies, because they realize the importance of learning from the older folk, like how do you talk to clients? How do you like, what does this mean? There's only so much you can do with like Zoom calls, and, we have things like this, which is really lucky, but like the in-person, that kind of chemistry, like, in the old days, right, Michael, you just be like putting a book together.
Yeah.
And I'd ask you a question, I'd come over and like you teach me about something. And so some of that's missing, a lot of that's missing. There's pluses and minuses to everything. So
I think Omar and Betty, you both brought up very different topics, but I think what we're describing is we lived in an era of where things were handmade. They were handmade.
Yeah.
It's like buying a handmade pair of shoes. And you touched a career, you felt a career. Even though we're talking about, and we're laughing, we're talking about how we would chart appointments in pencils, and a black pencil meant an option, and a red pencil meant that it's confirmed, and a little clip on the top of a board meant that there's something urgent, a message that had to be given to a model. And then you would write on the back of the board, Leela Moss, Omar called for you, call him back, right? We had multiple disciplines. As agents, we had multiple disciplines. We had to be a creative brain, we had to be a business brain, we had to be the personal manager, we had to be the agent who thinks of a career long-term. We had so many different jobs. And I think I talk about that today. It's why I believe I am who I am today, and why I'm able to actually envision the future, because our minds were developed, our spirit was developed. We were able to look at, I couldn't explain how fulfilling it was to go get a magazine, rip out all the pages, cut them perfectly, put them in a book, and go, wow, look at what we did. Look at these beautiful pictures from Paolo Roversi or Peter Lindbergh, right? It was, you touched it with your hands. And again, I don't want to discredit the present, because we are in the present. And it's just as, I just posted something on my LinkedIn yesterday. I did a story with Doug Ordway. Do you remember Doug Ordway, Omar?
My dear friends.
I did a story with him. We accidentally ran into each other on a beach in Costa Rica. Yeah. I just met a girl on the beach in Costa Rica that I thought was beautiful. Doug said he hadn't taken a picture in a long time because the pandemic. But I said, Doug, let's do a photo shoot. We got our cameras and we went and did a photo shoot. We did a beautiful photo shoot with this beautiful girl named Eden. Her father actually was a model in the 80s and 90s. His name was Don Van Ackerman. He was a very big commercial model, right? Because most men, as you know, because you represented the very best men, Omar, at Omar's Men, I want to give you a shout out, because you had one of the best, you still are a player in the business, is that you're recognized as somebody who works with a lot of talent, but your agency did represent the best models in the world. But so we went and we did the shoot, and I published it. And as I was publishing it, I was writing about it, and it's something that was very endearing to me, this story, because it reminded me of what it was like. It was reminding me, like, almost like Costa Rica is still like in another time, right? It's like it's a whole different world, because you are still discovering somebody on a beach, and you're saying to your friend photographer, let's go take some pictures, and before you know it, you're creating someone's life, right? And that's the advantage that today, because of time, agents today, because that's how the conversation started about what agents are like today, they don't have the time to market and develop talent, because it's money, because companies like modeling agency today are not owned by Michael Flutie and his mother. My mother and brothers worked in my company. Okay, it was a family business. Eileen Ford was a family business. Wilhelmina was a model who started her own company. Louise DuPont was a model. We didn't have hedge funds and Russian Algazars, coming and investing millions of dollars in a business. And then Betty, did we ever come to you and say, how much money did you book this week? Did we meet up? No, we didn't think about money, Omar. There was no concept of money. We just knew that a lot of the charts had a lot of red on them, and it meant two things. Either we had a lot of editorial or a lot of money. And it always balanced out, and you followed your instincts, you followed your heart.
You mentioned, I was very fortunate when I opened Omar's Men because I had an incredible mentor. Nadia, to me, was like, Nadia gave me pretty much her entire agency for me to represent on the West Coast. So I was pretty much a top agency in LA in one day, because I had all the big guys from men, because she was controlling the men's industry in New York City with men model management. But one of the things you just mentioned that was so beautiful and incredible to me was, remember, you said you found this girl, you called Doug shot her. Let's say, for argument's sake, these photographs are to be published by Elle magazine. You don't get to see these photographs for 3 to 6 months. Not like today, when you post something, boom, you get it immediately.
Yes.
We had to wait 3 to 6 months. But because of the ability of the telephone on our big mouth, we could call a client and say, hey, you know what? This is Betty calling from our company. You want to book this girl. Why? She just shot 10 pages of Italian Vogue with Paolo Roversi, with Barbieri, or whatever. The client, oh yeah, put her an option. We want her. The photos never came out. For 3 months, you're not going to see these photos. And I believe that was beautiful. Like you said, Michael, I saw the excitement. You're exactly like me. I used to drive down the boulevard on New York, and when you saw the billboard or the magazine, the tear sheet, you're like, I did that. And it was the beauty of creating nothing and making it into something. And correct me if I'm wrong, once an agent, don't you think always an agent? Like, your eye never leaves you. So you're always looking. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, what I think about that, it was when I was younger, it was okay. Now they think I'm a dirty old man. They have no idea that I'm staring at them because, like, who is that guy? But no, I'm kidding. But yeah, no, you're always an agent, and it's in your soul, it's in your heart. You never stop scouting people. Jennifer Starr, Jennifer Vendetti, all of the great casting agents that have, also scouted the streets, whether they went to Brazil, or they went to the Hamptons and discovered somebody. The photographers like the Bruce Webbers of the world, who, and the Mario Testinos of the world, who gave opportunities to people that they saw on the beach, and agents who took a shot at somebody. That is part of the magic that I think it's lost, because today agents, I remember 10 years ago, I had a conversation with Jenny Rose, one of my favorite agents, and I said, "What are you doing?" And she's head of scouting at IMG at the time. Now she's like running the whole entire European WME, IMG conglomerate. And, shout out to her for doing an incredible job. But I said, what are you doing, Jen? And she's like, looking at Instagram. I'm like, why? She's like, I'm scouting. Uma, we used to get on a plane, take a bus, and drive 6 hours to go meet the girl who lived in a little house on top of the hill that the hairdresser called us about, right? That's what it was about. And you did it. And you sat with the mother and the father, and you had to convince them that it was a really great, safe business, right? Nobody wanted to be a model. The ones that wanted to be models were not good models. It was the ones that didn't want to be models. It was the girl that walked in with her best friend, right? It was like, wait, who's that? That's my boyfriend. Oh, thank you very much, Julia. Bring your boyfriend in. I mean, that's what it was about. But it was about human beings interacting. And I think we as a society, whether we're model agents or Wall Street brokers, and Betty talked about how you used to walk into an agency and it felt like, I used to describe it as air traffic control at an airport meets Wall Street, right? It was like you're dealing and wheeling and you're making phone calls. And like you mentioned, you had 3 months, you had a 3-month runway to push that girl. Even if she went on a go-see and Peter Lindbergh loved her, you got on the phone, you're like, oh, she just went to see Peter and he loved her. Oh my God, send it to me. That was the art, right? Who do you do that with now? You post a picture on Instagram and you hope that you get some followers? We were just having this meeting today. Me and Justin and Alec, who works with us, we were talking about how do you move the needle in a world where it's overpopulated with so much content, so much talent. How do you set yourself apart from everybody else that's swimming in the ocean trying to get to shore, or the fisherman trying to catch a fish? How do you do that? Well, I have to say that I always go back to, well, it's no different than the way it was. It's the same principles. It's just a little different. I really believe that. Betty, do you agree?
Yeah, no, I feel like back then the whole ethos of company management was not just about the beauty, but it was like the person inside the package. So it was about the personality, and the ones who were the most successful were the ones who, went on to become like movie stars, went on to become like, huge artists. And so I feel like it's just come around almost full circle. Like, Michael started like creating these like personalities, and now like you can become a personality and then become a model. I'll give you an example. There's this big influencer named Wisdom. He's actually with IMG, and he just started making content, and then IMG signed him because they recognize the importance of social media. And so it's like, it's the whole like coming back to the personality. Like, were they like traditionally like model handsome like this or model beautiful? Not necessarily. It's about like even all the big social media like models that started out because of their connection, like Kendall Jenner, the Hadids, they have personalities. They're actually, for all their, I see a lot of stuff on the comments like, oh, this is not a model, like they're not. But, honestly, like it's this, everyone talks about like Nepo babies.
Yeah.
But honestly, it was back then too. You just never knew this person was a Nepo baby. You know what I mean? You just never knew it because we didn't have IG, and it was never exposed that their photographer or their friend's father was a famous, photographer. It's like, it's the same thing nowadays, It's just about like, because I see so many models who are beautiful. They have a couple seasons. I think this is what you were talking about, Michael, what I was saying about the shorter cycle of models. You can have an incredible face. You can photograph really well. But like, if you don't have that personality behind, like exciting the creatives, because the creatives are always, they have to do the money jobs. The money jobs pay the bills, right? But who they book for the editorials is still so important, because that kind of work doesn't pay. But, all these people are artists. You're an artist, Michael. Omar, you're an artist. You choose these people to, talk about and take care of. And, for me being at models.com, it's like I'm always, like you said, once an agent, always an agent. I'm always like, ooh, like I kind of advise sometimes like agencies put up Polaroids and like, it's not that flattering to the model,
Right.
Like you always want to
Yeah.
represent people, to the best they can, and then, the whole, it comes full circle of like, now it's personalities again. So,
You know, I tell you, I have these three words that possibly one of you, Michael, you could, answer this question and shed some light for me. You have influencers, bloggers, content creators. Sounds beautiful, but what I'm noticing in those three categories, hey, show me what you have. Okay, I'm an influencer. Okay, here it is. My face, my face, my face, my face. My dog, my dog, my dog. My cat, my cat. Me walking towards the ocean. You can see my butt. Here's my food. Oh, here's me and my girlfriend's going on a G5. Um, what am I, where's the influence? So what is, I'm a content creator. So is that, a content creator means I do my own portfolio and I show you what I believe I should look like, or can I document this fabulous life that I want you to believe this is who I am? Because I noticed some of the greatest models today in the world, I don't see them posting my face, my face, my face, my face, my dog, my dog, my dog, my dog, my food, my food. I don't see them doing that. So, what is the difference on these three categories? Content creator, influencer, blogger. I please help me with this one.
Well, Omar, I think, again, you bring up a really good point, and it's one of the things that we talk about at Think Studios all the time. And one of the reasons why we started the Screen Test Awards, right, is that we believe that every aspiring talent should be given an opportunity, right? You always have to find your lane. Like, what is it that you are really passionate about? Forget influencer, forget ambassador, forget all that for right now. What are you really passionate about? You go to medical school, you go to college, you study liberal arts, you're going to college. You have to find a lane of where you fit in. All of a sudden, you know what? I'm really good at science and biology. I think I'm going to become a doctor. At the end of the day, you're a college graduate who gets a job, right? But you found your lane. I think we're in an industry where before you think, Mom, I want to be an influencer or I want to be an ambassador, what is your talent? What's your talent? When you know your talent, right? And I'm going to transition into something that I think is really interesting that happened in 2003. And it was like the second sort of phase of my life, which is when I left the modeling industry as a model agent and opened up Michael Flutie's office, which was about talent branding. This is 2003, okay? It was at a time when I realized that just being beautiful, although I never just thought that just being beautiful was enough, because like Betty said, the models that we represented had a personality that was more beautiful than what they physically looked like. Jamie King, Amy Wesson, okay, Bridget Moynihan, Alexis Bledel, all of those great girls, and there's so many that went on to have much bigger careers, okay? They developed those careers because they had a talent. In 2003, when I opened up Michael Flutie's office, MFO, with a dear friend of mine, Sean Ramsey, I opened it to respond to the idea that in the world, the economy of talent currency at the time, that you had to be more than just beautiful, you had to have an expertise. And we kind of caught wind because there was this amazing show that came on called Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, which talked about your expertise. And all of a sudden, you being a designer or a chef, right, or a culture expert became a reason for people to want to be in business with you. Right. Kyan Douglas, who was a very good-looking guy who was a hairdresser, went on to become a spokesperson for L'Oreal with a $3 million contract. He was not a model. He was an expert who transitioned his expertise into influencing people. Early 2003, no TikTok, no Instagram, no Facebook. Next came Mary Alice Stevenson, if you remember who that was. Polly
Yeah.
Mellon's assistant, American Vogue, Allure Magazine, Harper's Bazaar. Mary Alice Stevenson was an expert. She was an expert at fashion. She knew how to style people. She went on to style Michelle Obama and many, many other very, very big top Hollywood celebrities, but she had an expertise. You'll love this. She had a Facebook following of 1,000 people. We took 1,000 people and we turned that into currency and said to clients, she has 1,000 people who are following her. You need to pay her a lot more money than you would pay a Heidi Klum or Giselle Bundchen. Why? Because she has influence and it's based on credibility. It's about credibility, and that is what your question is. You cannot be a person who just flaunts themselves with, in their bikini with their ass hanging out on a beach and say, oh, I have 100,000 followers, mostly probably, I don't want to get canceled tomorrow, so I'm not going to tell you who they are, but all of a sudden, those people are trading and selling, and it's like, oh, I have these many people, you should hire me to be the spokesperson for this brand. Those people don't translate into currency. Translation into currency is who follows you and why do they follow you. What you have to say, is it interesting enough, right? And that's the difference. And I think at the end, it comes down to being a creator. You're a creator. Betty's a creator. I'm a creator. We're not making it our business to go out and build an audience of millions of people so we can get paid, because we do something else we get paid for. But it's by being a creator and transitioning your career into being a person that has an expertise with influence. I think that that's where the magic is. And in the Screen Test Awards, I mean, to go back to why we created it, we said, if some kid out there who aspires, has an aspiration and a dream to be a model or an actor or a singer, and eventually will do, writers and dancers, and you don't know Omar, you don't know Michael, and you don't know Betty, or you're not the son of Cindy Crawford or the daughter of Cindy Crawford, what do you do? And we want to give those people an opportunity. And I believe that if you give people an opportunity and you give them education, because education is a very big part of mentoring the future talent of the world, because we've been educators our whole life, right? From day one, when you took a girl on, you educated her. You taught her how to take a picture or how to get dressed or how to pick up spoon and knife when she's at dinner with Karl Lagerfeld and Anna Wintour. And that time of yesterday, I think, needs to come back, because these young creators today need to be influenced by people that have the history and the knowledge and the expertise that we have. And I believe that that's what the answer to the question is.
Okay, we have our time is pretty limited, so I want to cover Betty, I want you to speak to. I know, right,
I
Michael?
told you.
I know.
Said
We could walk
30
for hours.
minutes. What are you talking about?
Betty,
We can sit here for 2 hours. Go ahead.
Tell us this transition from model agent to becoming part of the team over at models.com, and what's going on over there.
Well, I have to say that I do always tell agents that I used to be an agent, and it is literally, I hate to say it, one of the hardest jobs in the world, because you care so much about the model, right? And you want to give them the world, but you're actually I always say you're kind of squeezed between the model and the client, because the model's like, well, where's my job? And the client's like, I want to give you $2 for this. So, and you have to actually have a certain personality. Michael is like the perfect, like, he believes so passionately. What I discovered recently, that I'm much more, like, even me doing this Instagram live, I'm like, my heart is beating. Like, I don't like to be in front of the camera. I don't like to, Michael, it was like, you always talk about like calling up those, this and that studio. And I was like, it was terrifying. Cause like, I would be terrified of calling up Delois. She like scared the heck out of me. Delois is Stephen Meisel, right? But I actually met her, and she's the sweetest person in the world, right? But the thing is, like, you have to have a certain kind of personality. And I think you definitely have to have boundaries, you know, like in terms of like, and this is like like texting and cell phones. Like, this is back in the days of like pagers, you know, and like phone calls. And so, you know, I think that like you have to have a very sure sense of yourself being an agent to be a great agent. You know, you can't give yourself totally, because then you end up feeling like there's nothing left of yourself, you know. So I was an agent, and then I was like, Michael, I love you. I don't think I can do this anymore. Like, you know, it was not anything to do with the company. It was more like me, who I was. So I tried being a casting director, and I don't know if you know this. I don't know if Jennifer Starr is still on here, but it's really hard to be a casting agent too, because the agencies are like, give me $10,000 for this model, and the client's like, I'll give you $2. You know, so it's also really, it's like political too, and you know, I don't like the whole playing the game. You know, I actually ended up trying to. I was actually Barbara Fister's first assistant for like a hot minute, and it was really interesting. I met Ashton Kutcher and Giselle when I was like assisting her. Like, they were just at the start of their careers. Giselle knew no English, but she like came in all bubbly, like you knew she was going to be someone, you know. And then I was like, okay, I don't want to be a casting director. God no. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can be a money booker. And so I actually joined Maryland in New York, and they were really doing well at the time too. But I was like, I want to be a money booker, and it was great. I have to be honest, Michael. Models love doing my jobs, you know, because I don't know if you remember the story of like when Amy Weston like conveniently forgot her passport for the Italian Mary Claire job, and then remembered it in time for the money job that I booked her with. It was really funny. Like, I love Amy to death, you know, but it was like, oops, I can't find it. Oh, for the money job, I just found it. So it's that kind of thing, right? So, but at the same time, it's like the whole, like, it was still like something, you know, like, it's a great job, but I was like, there was something more. So this opportunity came to join this startup. It was Stefan and Wayne Sterling. I don't know if you remember Wayne.
I remember.
Yeah. So it was like they had started like in December of '99, and I joined in June. And you know, I was like, met them, like, who the hell are you? And then they offered this opportunity to like kind of talk about the business. I was like, oh, that's interesting, because you know, I also respect the agents because they fight so much for their models, like so much, right? But at the same time, you don't realize like these are your models, and this is the fashion world, you know. So I joined, and at the time, Wayne dealt with all the women, you know, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll deal with the men, you know, because like no one cared about the men. They still really don't. It's too bad, because you know, it's like, I think I read somewhere that modeling is the only business where women out earn the men. I think
That's
and
correct.
yeah, so it's the only legal business that is. And so I think that, you know, and I took it on, and the male models were always so sweet, you know, they're really nice. And so we had the top 50 rankings, and it was just became this thing. And, you know, I really credit, you know, all the connections I made, mostly through Michael, you know, talking to Marzia. So I still email sometimes, Michael, with Marzia from Why Not, you know. And I have to tell a funny story, Omar. I have been emailing her for 30 something years. It's Marzia from Why Not, you know. She could pass me in the street, I would not know who she was, because I never went to Milan.
I have to interrupt you for 1 second, because I see something that says 21 minutes remaining, and I don't have that wired yet. So now we have 16 seconds remaining.
Okay. So anyway, just so
listen, I have to say thank you.
It was great. Thank you so much.
We're gonna do this again, guys, and one love.
Thank you, man.
One love.